Today also, I would want to evaluate government's communication machinery entirely for the year 2014. I'm not going to do that alone. I have two gentlemen with me here in the studio. I have Fred Chidi, who is a journalist, a very veteran journalist, and he's to my far left. To my immediate left is James Afedo. He's a PR and communications consultant or specialist, as he prefers to be called. You're welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
2014, what was it like for you? I'm going to start with you first. If you look at the entire government communication machinery, I know there's been a number of reviews on several sectors of the economy, but let's look at the communication machinery for 2014. What would you say?
I would say that it's a very challenging outfit. One would have thought that by now we would have harmonized government communication, probably being handled by the director of communication or head of communication, whatever they call it. But it appears that it's so fragmented. You know, we have the Ministry of Communication now. It's been consumed by communication itself, information communication, and then we have the communication at the presidency, and so it kind of confused people. I am even told that government communication is on 3 legs, and so that explains why you tend to have a lot of fragmented or pieces of information. Now, the party's communication machinery is also separate from government and then the ministry, and so sometimes you get to have a feel that the communication is not harmonized properly, and so whatever information that comes out to the public probably hasn't been really processed very well. And so that explains why sometimes we have all of these problems as to who said what and who is quotable and who is not quotable and all of that.
Right, James, your description of 2014 for government's communication machinery.
I think I agree to a large extent with my senior colleague, Fred, that it's been more or less a topsy-turvy year for communication. And we know why it has been like that. It doesn't appear that there is a lot of harmony in the system. And what happens is if you have different units or different structural elements all trying to deal with the same issue, the tendency of inconsistency happens. You know, it's a likelihood. So the best thing that should have happened was to ensure that harmony. And so what I wish I should have seen was a central body made up of representatives of, say, the Information Ministry, or now the Communication Ministry, the party's communication machinery, as well as the presidential communication machinery. They come together, they strategize, and then they decide who speaks on what and what to say. That is what is supposed to happen. And I know to some extent the system tries to do that, but when it comes to speaking publicly, we've had a lot of inconsistencies.
We'll talk about those inconsistencies. I think that is what government tried to do, like you said, when the Communications Ministry absorbs the Information Ministry. But that distinction did not seem to, or that move, did that play out well for you?
Well, you would have noticed that the last couple of months, you would have heard Dr. Omani Buama, that's the name, right? Talking more on all aspects of national life, from economy to whatever. As to whether he has the competencies to deal with that is another thing. We do know him as a medical doctor. But for me, the challenge is people who speak for government. And you will see even some party people speaking with energy, zest, on radio programs all over, from morning to evening. And you wonder if they have the right kind of information to do that. We can understand that, you know, party people are very energetic and they want to project a positive face for their party. But they tend to do more harm than good, because, I mean, if you listen to all the, especially the one from your stable here at Sempa, all manner of people from government communication come, and they have the authority to speak on the issues. And so you tend to, there's a little bit of difficulty as to what is party information and what is government information. You see what I mean? But I think that the harmonization or the consummation of information into communication, it's a good thing, but communication itself is big and broad.
Did that lack of distinction affect our work as journalists?
It does, because one of the things that we do, or the central point of our work, is sourcing. You know, where do you get the information? And so if there is one minister, if Omani Boama is the one that will speak on all of the issues, sometimes his availability is also a problem. You know, probably that explains why he has, how many deputies does he have? Two?
I'm not sure now. He has two.
Communication, two deputies. So, and that is why the deputies must be seen to be helping him out. But I think that he's the one speaking on all manner of issues.
Should the communications ministry necessarily speak on any and everything?
Not necessarily, no. Because I think even in the US, we have the Obama's press secretary who speaks on everything that has to do with the presidency or the White House. And then we also know that the Secretary of State has his press secretary who also speak on everything that's got to do with you know, the US's international relations and all of that. So it's okay if you have different units. But the point is that there must be a central core that plans strategy. And then also one of the things that is leading, that I believe is leading to the confusion in the system, is that although there are attempts to put some structure in place, those structures are not clearly defined. So unlike the previous regime where the NPP government had ministers in place as well as individual spokesperson on specific sectors of the economy, we don't seem to have that currently. So if you have one minister who is trained as a medical doctor, who is speaking on issues about technology, energy, finance, sports, all of that, that is overwhelming, right? So best thing to do in order to ensure some consistency in the system is to have specialists in specific areas, so that one person speaks on finance, one person speaks on general communication, another speaks on, say, energy and all of that.
Within the same ministry. Within
the same system, but they all sit together at a planning table. They plan which arguments to adopt, which strategies to use.
That won't mean employing new people. It could be retraining.
Yeah, retraining.
Because we want to cut down on that.
I wonder why we will have to be talking about one ministry coordinating all of it or talking on all issues when we have sector ministers. There is now we have a power ministry who is headed by a technocrat who knows his act, and therefore when it comes to power issues, he's the one that's supposed to be talking about it. If you come to road and transport, sometimes even the distinction between the ministry is very confusing. We have a roads ministry, so the road minister should be talking on roads. If you go to health, the health minister should be talking. But the fact that we do have all of these sectors, it points to the fact that those are technical areas that the technocrats should be talking. Then again, whoever says that the people at the ministry, the technocrats who run the show, shouldn't be talking, I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, the chief directors, the directors at the ministry, you go to them for an interview, they tell you, go and see the minister.
Or go and see the PR.
You see that thing?
I think that's the most annoying.
It's
go and
very,
see the PR.
very, very frustrating for journalists.
Yeah.
You know, because they are the technocrats who know the in and out, the runnings of their ministries. And so they are the ones that should be doing the talking.
And one of the things that I see as a drawback, particularly when ministers become the first line of response, is that when they say something and it becomes a problem, who comes to clear the mess? Right? And so I believe that, as Fred said, there should be technical persons who deal with the first line of issues. And then if the minister has to come and speak about something, whatever he says is final. There shouldn't be anything else, and so he comes to settle the ground. But where you get a minister waking up every morning and from one radio station to the other, they don't have much time for strategy.
I think we saw a lot of that and a lot of the inconsistencies you spoke about earlier with the past situation when we were speaking to the VRA, some were speaking to the Energy Ministry, those who were lucky enough, which shouldn't be the word to use, spoke to someone from the presidency, and we were getting different information, different timelines. For you, what interpretation did you make from all of that?
It means there's confusion, total confusion, and at the end of it, it is the recipient of the work we do that suffers. In other words, we're talking about the consumers of news and current affairs, the work we do, because they don't have the right information. Now, we as journalists, our job is to serve as a conduit through which information gets to them. So if we ourselves are getting conflicting information, then we pass that on. So it is very difficult. So, for example, if you take the past situation, the doomsaw that we are in, you never will know exactly what the plan is or whether we are going to see the end anytime soon. Just this morning, I think I saw in one of the papers, Dr. What's the name? The new power minister.
Otin.
No, Dr. Donko, saying that in 6 months, in 6 months, the doomsaw situation will be over. And then I asked myself, is he saying this based on
some study?
Yeah, study, and then also, does he have all the information? I know he's a technocrat in the energy sector and he knows his game, but there are other players in the game. So has he harmonized all of those information and coming out straight at Ghanaians and saying that the power situation will be over in 6 months? And we are going to be holding him to it. He mentioned, this thing was published today, the 30th of December. So the 30th of July, I will grab my microphone and my camera and I'll go to his office and say, you promised that this thing was going to be over in 6 months. Is it over?
I hope he gives that interview.
I hope so.
I hope he gives that interview. But let's look at the presidency itself.
Yes.
And the number of people who have come out to be communicators from the presidency. In my opinion, I think there were too many communicators at the presidency.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, James.
He's a specialist, so there are specialists there.
I'll come to that in a second. I think one of the biggest disasters for the government for this year has been in the energy sector, and everybody agrees to that. And the communication around it has been very problematic. And I've always said that if I am president and a technical person tells me that this is going to be the, this particular problem is going to end at this time, and I rely on that information, then it turns out to be false. Not once, not twice, many times.
Absolutely.
And you are still keeping your job, then I'm not effective. And that is problematic. And so if the new power minister is not learning from the deceit of the president, and he is also repeating the same mistakes, he's going to compound the problem. And I think that it's time for them to take a back seat and start looking at things more comprehensively. I always say that the cardinal rule of customer service is to under-promise and over-deliver. And when you over-deliver, people would have confidence in you.
But in their case, if they under-promise.
No, they over-promise actually and under-deliver. And that is the problem we have in the system.
Nobody would vote for them if they under-promise.
No, certainly not. It is as a result of that confusion that the president comes out to give information that is not really true, and then now says that he's not going to make any promise again, which is yet another promise that he's not going to promise.
And even after that, there were a lot more promises.
Yes.
I think there were a couple more promises
about,
from Boko.
what was the question?
The presidency.
About the presidency and the too many communicators, in my opinion.
Yes, there are. There are too many of them for me, if you ask me, because there is a central figure, our own colleague Bendoche Malo, who is the head of communications there. Yeah. And then there are other people who are, you know, some are specialists, some are consultants and experts. There's so many of them. Yeah. And they are representing government in many fora and talking on a variety of issues and muddying the waters. And I am told that even within the Flagstaff House, there is so much jostle for power and tough war within that communications outfit alone. And so probably the presidency maybe is removed, or the president as a human being is far removed from what is happening around him, and so needs to come down a little bit and get to know the people that are talking for him. And some of them, I am told that one of the specialists, the president was reported to have said that he does not even know how the gentleman came to be in the Flagstaff House, and yet he's talking on government policy. So I think, you know, it's my opinion, humble opinion, that probably the president is removed, or probably somebody has created a gulf between himself and what is happening in reality, and that he needs to bridge that gap so that he knows exactly what the situation is on the ground.
James?
Yeah. Officially, I mean, we all know that Mr. Malo is the head of communications and supposed to be speaking on behalf of the presidency and the president. I've heard him, I've seen him on a number of television stations in the past, but it looks like his presence is not being felt that much. As to whether it is as a result of the theft war or the alleged theft war, I'm not quite sure about that. But I think that one of the things going forward, which the presidency needs to be concerned about, is that they have, barely 2 years to go to the next election. If nothing at all, communication and communication around the president is one of the things they must pay attention to in 2015. It is absolutely critical. If the president says something and someone comes and says a different thing, or, you know, those kinds of inconsistencies should not be tolerated. And sometimes it helps if you have to sacrifice people you love in order for the system to survive. Please, that decision must be taken.
Because the government is not a preserve of just the few people in the Flagstaff House.
Yeah.
All of us have a stake in it. And that is why it's important that if somebody is not delivering, you know, chuck him off. Let him step aside so that somebody else...
I think perhaps, you know, from time to time we should have a full list of the official mouthpieces at the presidency. Because then, in the last days, we saw the issue of Sam George, and then how we have always known him as a communicator from the presidency. Suddenly after the problem, then he became a specialist. I've seen some reports put him at a
But one of the challenges, I think that the party itself, the party communication is another aspect of the whole conversation. And you would have noticed that after their congress in Kumasi, there have been some moves to move away from what the propaganda tag to communication. So that is also another issue for conversation, because what is propaganda? You know, and the propaganda has a negative connotation, you know, as far as, you know, our body politics is concerned. So they may have realized that and so have moved away from it. So they've dropped the propaganda aspect of communication and are calling it communication. That's quite interesting.
It's also important to point out that sometimes there are very real, you know, issues that people are attempting to speak about, but because of the tag, the propaganda tag, even if it is true, people are very suspicious about the person saying it and how they are saying it. For instance, if you take the very, you know, massive development projects that are going on in the road sector, even in the power sector, as well as even in the water sector, it's real that those projects are ongoing. But when deadlines are given, and then someone comes to speak about it, and then it turns out that the deadlines are not met, or the delivery is actually not happening as it is, or the communication around that is not being effective as it is, then it becomes a problem. And so the change from propaganda to what? Communication office is fine, but I just hope that it's not going to be just an issue of name changing, but the substance must it must reflect on the substance.
I think it was also very difficult in the year 2014, and perhaps that's been the practice over the years, to differentiate what was party stance from government stance, or from the presidency stance, and so everything was just mashed up. It was difficult to write out and then not attributed to government or attributed to the political party NDC. But let's mark them out. How well did they communicate? I mean, communicate in the sense of the word. How well did these communicators we are paying the taxpayers' money, especially you and I, our money, how well?
They're talking. They're talking. They're making a lot of noise. But most of the noise that is generated, the substance of it is what is the problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't be having this conversation. Because if, for example, the dominant issue of power challenges that we have, and we have various communication about the solution or even the cause of it, then it means there's a problem. Because I remember when this thing started, you remember when they said the West African gas pipeline was, the pirates attacked it and all of that, and it was going to be fixed within 2 weeks. It turned into a month, into 2 months. And so it means that
even the gas project,
the gas project itself,
so the president is giving timelines, the energy minister is giving timelines.
So they are talking all right. They are talking, they are visible, you can see them everywhere, on all the talk shows, radio, television, but the information is not gelling, it's not harmonized, so that the right information is not being sent out. I'm not too sure whether it's a deliberate way of maybe covering up the truth, but it appears that the system is not working well.
For me, it was as if most of them did propaganda, as we understand it in our context here, than communicates. Because then you call this person for an interview, and because an opposing person is on the other phone line, instead of churning out the information, they tend to just counter what the person is saying without giving you any real facts.
To a large extent, I don't blame them. Because what they are doing is they are trying to battle for the hearts and minds of Ghanaians and those who are going to go to the polls in 2016. And if you have an environment where you have an obsessive opposition that seems to get its acts together when it comes to communication, they appear to have a better structure in place when it comes to communication, and they are always on the neck of government, almost 24/7. Anybody at all who works for government, who is not supported by a similar structure, will be found wanting, or will appear to have been buried, in the communication, or in the conversation. So I think I give credit to the opposition. They are doing quite well when it comes to communication. Perhaps I think it should be a learning, experience for those who speak for government. They should learn from whatever the opposition is doing and do better, because I always say that it is better to put your enemy, always constantly on the run, chasing your shadows, than to allow them to rather, put you on the run and you come back fighting. That is not good. And so if you have a system where the opposition appears to be putting the government on its toe every time, and the government is always in the reactionary mode, it becomes problematic. And so they should look at that. It's important. In terms of personalities, I think that the communication minister, Dr. Amani Buama, is fantastic. He's a doctor, a medical practitioner, but he is very strategic when it comes to communication. He's forthright, and his demeanor is also excellent. So when he's speaking...
demeanor, yes, but I don't know. I think at some point I felt he gave too scanty information. So it was difficult for me to write a story from what Omane Buama had said about a particular thing, unless perhaps it's coming from... It's a telco business and it had to do with communication. But say it had to do with another ministry.
But that's his job.
It was difficult for me to
get you confused, so you don't
No, he didn't get me confused, but I think he always left me hanging.
Exactly. I mean, if you're a reporter worth your salt, you will know that some of the information that they give you, it's nothing to write home about, to do a meaningful story out of it. And most of them are rehearsed anyway. It is the same thing that other people are saying, you know. So it's like they're sharing notes that when you go on this radio station, go say that. But you see, the bigger picture for me is that it is our body politics. Over the years, 57 years of independence, we're still practicing the political system where we pander to the whims of the presidency. So the president needs to hear that we're doing very well. But the reality on the ground does not reflect what the people are saying. But they will tell, they will speak about it that, oh, it is all nice and rosy and dandy, and, you know, there are challenges. You remember when the issue about the economic problems that we were facing, they said it's not a crisis. We are not in crisis yet. It's a challenge. You know? Well, it's a challenge, but it's a crisis situation. Why don't you just tell us the truth and let us know what measures we have put in place to resolve the issues? You know, we have to go all around it until the Bank of Ghana came out with those measures and people started defending it. The experts, if you remember, the experts said, look, if you do that, you're killing business. And therefore the city was not going to rise. After 3 months or 4 months, then they reversed the situation. Probably because we are not listening too much. We are so polarized that everything that is coming from government is good. If you belong to the opposition, everything that is coming from government is bad. You know, so there is no middle ground where people who know will come out. Civil society. Sometimes I blame civil society for the mess. They have given everything up to the politicians, and they are the ones, you know, managing the affairs. Civil society that would do a research. The research findings are all, you know, gathering dust on the shelf.
As for the scanty information, I think we've had a number of it this year. We've had it with the IMF situation too. Exactly what we were going in for. It was difficult for government to share with the Ghanaian people. We saw that also with the Ghana-Ivory Coast relations over maritime border issues. Very scanty information given out. But perhaps it's because we have still not passed our right to information bill.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit it right on the head. As to who has interest in that more than journalists, I don't know. But it appears that there must be a reason why this thing has been hanging in Parliament for all these years. You know, those of us in the electronic media, the broadcasting bill is still sitting in Parliament.
Absolutely.
You know, and for whatever reason, we don't know, because they do not want us to delve deep into what they do and, you know, unearth some of the scandals, you know, associated with the operations.
I think so too, James.
Yeah, I think I've heard the president speak a number of times on his commitment to ensure that those bills are passed, and I think they've been brought to Parliament, and so it's down to the honourable members of the House to really take action on it and get it passed, because we need the information, no matter how embarrassing it is. We need it, and it would help us to clean up the system, because when people are aware that whatever you do, the Ghanaian public will have access to the details and the nitty-gritties of it, they'll be very careful in the decisions they make. So it's important that those bills are passed into law. I don't know to what extent the Whistleblowers Act has helped in trying to help us, you know, unearth corruption. But I know in the last few instances, particularly with the National Service scandal, it was through a whistleblower that the president initiated action. I think the JIDA thing too was through someone, which became one of the biggest scandals running, 2 years into the government. We need those things.
I really want us to look at this just before we go. The president himself, I think the president made, in fact, the president spoke a lot in the year 2014 and made a number of remarks. What's your take on him?
Oh, President, I'm not surprised. I mean, he being an expert in communication, so-called, so he knows how to dribble his way around issues, and he's a good talker, good conversationalist, you know, can engage people in that kind of thing. So I think it's fantastic. He's done very well. But, you cannot just talk when you don't have the information. I mean, and the information must come from somewhere. If the information is compromised, then he is giving us a compromised information. So as far as he's concerned, he's done his job well by telling us what we need to know. But sometimes it is rather wrong information through no fault of his, but just the people that he surrounded himself with who will not tell him the truth.
Did he say some things that you felt, well, the president shouldn't have said that?
Oh, a number of them. Which one? About the power thing. When he promised that the power generation, the doomsort thing will be a thing of the past. And it's a voice clip that rings all over. The doomsort will be a thing of the past, you know. And here we are, whether it's a thing of the past, we all live to see. My 6-year-old will say Mahama has visited us again.
I think one of the first words my son learned was light off.
Yes.
And so when the lights come back on, he's so happy. Light off.
Yeah. But it's only in this country when the lights come, then we're happy. If it goes on, we say, oh, when the light comes, say, yay!
Absolutely. How about you, James?
I believe that this year the president has been quite measured to some extent.
Has he?
Quite, to some extent in his communication compared to the previous year. What I would like to say personally for him is that at the on the international stage, because he's a communicator, he does so well. Even his last speech at the UN General Assembly, for me, I did the analysis, it was the best so far. And I am expecting a president who will speak in the same manner, because sometimes it's not just about what you're saying, it's how you say it. You're speaking to the hearts and minds of people.
But we can't say same of the First Lady. but I mean, for me, does it depict a grooming, communication-wise deficiency at the presidency?
You nailed it right on the head. It's simple as that. I have watched...
What, reference First Lady?
Reference First Lady.
Well...
Or even the president himself. Because sometimes I felt that, well, you want to be extra poor, but you could...
Well, with the First Lady, I mean, I don't think Ghanaians elected our First Lady. We elected the First Gentleman of the state who happened to have been married to the woman. So, I mean, the woman is nice. I mean, but as to whether... I mean, probably the benchmark is Nana Konedu, you know, or Ajima Rollins, who will be in your face and tell you the way it is. But ever since, I don't think we've had anybody that standard. The current First Lady is a nice woman. I like her very much.
Oh, she is a nice woman.
Yes.
She's a nice woman.
Yeah, I think we're discussing communication.
Yes, I think it would be quite unfair to measure the First Lady's ability to command the English language.
Oh, no, not that. To communicate.
When you listen to her, in terms of substance, she's giving prepared speeches. So she reads out the prepared speeches. We all admit that she's not as smooth as it's supposed to be, but I believe that constant training, constant grooming by professionals can get anybody at all better in speaking. And so I think that has not been strong for her.
Now we have to go, but 30 seconds for both of you. Were there any good things you saw as far as communications is concerned from the presidency, or some gray areas you hope in 2015 they would look at?
I would just want them to harmonize the communication aspect very well so that they would tell us the truth. We need to know the truth. I mean, even in your domestic setting, if somebody in a responsible position is not telling you the truth, you tend to have a hazy idea. And trust is very, very important in politics, you know. I mean, if you are going to be asking us to vote for you, we must trust what you're doing. If you're having difficulty, let us know that there's difficulty. Don't collide and say, oh, it is not a crisis but challenge.
James?
One of the things used to market the president during the election was that he's a decisive president or decisive person. I think that we need to see...
I guess it turned out to be a promise.
No, I think we need to see more of his decisiveness when it comes to decisions, particularly about appointees and about people whose behavior is trying to draw on the system. One of the highlights, I would say, was the ability to manage the move away from the $3 billion Chinese loan, which they were chasing for a number of years, to say we are going to restrict ourselves to only 1.5 billion. I think the communication around that was quite effective. Communication around the IMF thing too, for me, was a little bit effective, just that the media was confused as to what exactly we were going for, and the clarity was not given that much. But in terms of why we have to go there, they were a bit strategic.
I'm not sure I'd agree with you on that.
But
because we ended up finding a document with the World Bank that gave us information our government was hiding from us, and I think it was unfair. I also think that communication around funerals were really good because yes. They did well. They did well when they had to communicate funeral arrangements. We were able to get spot-on information. But we want to move away from funerals. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Fred TD is a journalist. James Afedo is a PR and communications specialist. My name is Kemini Nyamani Amano. At midday, I'll tell you more about how Kwakese, you may know, has been behind bars for some time now. He's been granted bail now. I'll tell you more about it when I see you again on News Today. See you soon. Goodbye.